without further ado, let me introduce the panel, starting on my far left. Marco Brunelli, the CEO of Serie A. Alongside him, Hani Balan, the CEO of the Qatar Stars League and also an executive committee member for the Italian Super Cup. And the man to my left-hand side, Duncan Walkinshaw, the director of programmes at beIN Sports. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Like I say, one of our focuses in the bigger picture of bringing football to new destinations is going to be the Italian Super Cup here. That is coming to Doha imminently this month, and we'll see Milan come up against Juventus. Marco, let's start with you, and specifically the Italian Super Cup before we expand things a little bit more broadly. Why bring this trophy and tournament, one, away from Italy generally, you've been to other parts of the world like China, and two, to Doha specifically?
Okay, good afternoon first of all. Thank you for the invitation to this prestigious forum and event. Yes, that's correct. Italian Super Cup is typically the right product to be promoted abroad and to be exploited in order to make our activities, our strategies, our sporting product well known all around the world. Sincerely speaking, we started so many years ago with this approach, because the first edition of Italian Super Cup to be played outside Italy was played in '93. It was an occasional event, but starting with the last decade, 2002, 2003, practically once every 2 years we went abroad to play Super Cup. The reasons are several. Of course, maybe the most important one is that we are dealing with and speaking about an official event. This is very, very important, according to my opinion, because it's not so common, so easy for a league, for a national association to export an official tournament, an official event, which is usually played at home. We are facilitated in this way, for example, the fact that unlikely what happens in other European leagues, we are the unique organizers of both the national tournament, of course, the Serie A, and also the National Cup and the Super Cup, which is, I suppose that everybody knows, but typically the Super Cup, like the Charity Shield in England or the Supercopa in Spain, is the match between the winner of the national title and the winner of the National Cup. Exceptionally this year, due to the fact that Juventus won both the title last year and the National Cup, the match will be played between the winner of both tournaments and the runner-up of the National Cup, which is AC Milan. But I think that the first big opportunity is that of being able to export, to play abroad an official, a true event. I remember when I was younger and almost more than 20, maybe 30 years ago, the big professional American leagues started exporting their games even in Europe, but internationally, and they started with exhibitions. Then understood that it was not enough and organized regular pre-season matches. But now both NBA and NFL play regularly with contracts which last many years with European sides, regular matches of their regular seasons in several towns in Europe. So I think that organizing abroad in order to promote yourself, organizing abroad exhibition is not enough any longer. And so we started with an official tournament, which is more exciting than any other opportunity.
It is important, isn't it, Hani, to stress that competitive fixture coming to a place like Qatar as opposed to exhibition. We've seen the likes of Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona often visit this region, and of course that is strong for exposure. But what do you gain as CEO of the Qatar Stars League, sitting obviously on the committee for the Italian Super Cup as well, from having a one-off competitive fixture in a place like Doha?
First of all, I would like to wish everybody here a pleasant stay in Doha, and I would also wish good afternoon for everybody, and I hope this talks will be beneficial for all of us. It gives us a great pleasure and pride actually to host such a tournament. First of all, it's it's a showcase of how strong the relationship between us as football entities in Qatar, consisting of Supreme Committee, Qatar Football Association, and QSL. How strong is the relation, the sportive relation, especially the football family relation between us and the football family in Italy. So this is a showcase of this is one of the reasons. The second reason is it demonstrates how passionate we are, how capable we are in Qatar, but also it demonstrates the capacity and the passion that we feel for hosting such a tournament. It serves as a platform of exchanging experience, logistic experience, management experience, operational experience. So it gives us also a temperature measurement of how we could develop, how can we assess ourselves, and also it gives us an opportunity to show the world that we are in Qatar, are capable of hosting prestigious events such as the Super Cooper. I think it is very important to identify that we are here in Qatar as a football family between Qatar Stars League and the Supreme Committee and Qatar Football Association works in hand as a unity to stage such a competitions. And the purpose of that is we need to have these stages and the organization and the operation of these stages to assess and help us for the future development, ready also for the great events in the future. So it also promote the vision of 2030 in Qatar, which is also focused on human resources, on social responsibilities, and social affairs. So it's a great event. We are happy to host it. We are proud and pleasure to host it, and I hope it goes well and everybody enjoy it, and everybody has an excellent experience out of this Super Cup.
Duncan, what about from a broadcast perspective? What does beIN Sports learn from having these one-off events in Doha ahead of the World Cup in 2022? Is it deemed as practice, and what are some of the challenges that you face when putting on an event in your own backyard?
Well, I think we've had a great deal of experience on site for covering events, Champions League and World Cups. We have huge presence at the most important events in the world. So I think on site we have great experience, but actually within Qatar of competitive football matches, we need to gain more. But it's a platform to show how the quality that we can bring to productions, and that quality will be on a par with anything globally, so that you can see the quality that we are bringing to all our productions. And an event like that, especially when it's competitive, I think the key thing is we need more competitive events that have real significance. The result has real significance, as opposed to being more of a symbolic performance where we don't get the key players perhaps. We need to have these events which are meaningful, like the tennis is meaningful, other events that we have here. And the more football we have here that is meaningful, the more viewership it will attract, and the more it will reveal to the global audience of the quality that we are capable of bringing to an event. And that quality will be as good as anywhere in the world, and it will become better, because as we push and progress the capabilities of broadcasting, we can broadcast better than anybody.
And we'll talk about how the industry is changing a little bit later. But Hani, Duncan used the word competitive and meaningful, and we've all alluded to the fact that when something is actually at stake, such as the trophy here in the middle, there's more interest, it's more marketable as an event. But you, of course, also CEO of a competitive league, the Qatar Stars League, and we hope that when a Super Cup comes, a brand like Serie A, giants like Juventus and Milan will fill the stadium. How can you use that publicity, those numbers through the door, and ultimately a new demographic of fans to strengthen your own league, which I think you'll be the first to admit is lacking at times in numbers?
I think the key here is fan experience and the facilitations of how this match or the environment that the match is played on is most enjoyable. Of course, the technical level and technical standards is very important to elevate also the fan interest. But definitely but learning from experience and using some even of our QSL programs that involves a lot of fans off the field of play can be also a vehicle to attract more fans to the stadium. But definitely, what we want to make this match as easy as possible to everybody, easy in access, easy in reaching the stadium, ticketing, even providing the right hospitality programs for everybody, so that everybody can enjoy this match and can have fun. And this is, I think, this is a target that we are always striving to reach, and we are always trying to achieve. Hopefully, the collection of data also through our ticketing system in collaboration with all the stakeholders will help us also to reach out for more fans. And it's very important to maintain this communication between us, which we normally do in the league matches as well. But definitely, this is a great opportunity to QSL to capture even more data, to prove an excellent and to demonstrate an excellent experience for fan, and hence definitely, of course, the technical level of the match will play a great part. We are all expecting a great competitive match, and hopefully we can see the crowds again seeing local matches in the league.
Marco, let me play devil's advocate with you for a moment. We know in this part of the world, bringing an Italian Super Cup is a wonderful experience, a great idea. It's innovative, nobody's denying that. But I'm a Leicester City fan, and we played in the Community Shield for the very first time. And if somebody took that event away from Wembley Stadium and me, I might be angry. How has a move from a Juventus or Milan's fan perspective back in Italy away from an Italian stadium being received, and how do you pacify ultimately your main fan base? How do you persuade them that it is also a good idea to play a flagship and competitive game away from home turf?
Of course, it's quite impossible in such an occasion to have everybody happy with the situation you have created. This year we were a little bit surprised seeing that several hundred tickets have been bought also by Italian fans. So it has been also maybe due to the specific period of the year when the match is going to be played, because it's just a couple of days before Christmas, in the middle of the holidays. Christmas holidays, and so I think that several Italians decided to come here, taking the opportunity to attend the match, and so it has also become a touristic opportunity for I think, for the country. But of course, it's a matter of choices. We need to compete also on the international stage. I think that what we are learning from each other, looking at what the other leagues are doing since so many years, is that as sporting organizers, as a league, we should think and act globally. We should compete with other leagues, not just on a domestic stage, but looking at what happens worldwide. And I think that it is not just a matter of a single event, I understand, but as I said before, this is a tool which should be exploited because it has peculiar characteristics which can be used and exploited in this direction. But of course, should be a part of a wider strategy, which is made also of other communication tools, of other kind of events, of a lot of investment made in the quality of contents to be to be given, to be offered to the broadcasters, for example, to the media. I think that what we have done, we have exploited, developed during the last years domestically in terms of technical innovation, new cameras to be used, centralized TV production of our events, and increase of the number and the quality of dedicated new contents to be guaranteed to the broadcasters should be the benchmark also for the international product. And so putting all these things together can define a strategy which could help us, we hope, to reduce in some way the gap that currently we have with the other main leagues. I remember that maybe 20 years ago, or maybe even less than 20 years ago, we were maybe the leading league in European football, and so maybe in the world. Now we have lost some positions and some opportunities, especially compared with La Liga and the Premier League. And we are trying to reduce this kind of gap. Of course, there is a sort of vicious cycle to be turned back, because we need, you need a lot of money to be invested in order to reduce this gap. But of course, money comes from what you earn, for example, from selling of TV rights, both domestically and internationally. We lost some opportunities, and so we are not any longer the richest leagues in terms of TV revenues, and so we have less money than our competitors to be invested in the development of our product, mainly internationally. But I think, for example, that in the near future, we should give to our license or to our right holders a clear message. That is, I imagine that part of revenues coming from international broadcasters which invest their own money to buy the rights for Italian matches will be automatically reinvested in the promotion of our product abroad. This should be also a guarantee to our partners, because I think that one of the most important things that our partners ask in order to be with us in this process is that this money is reinvested partially in promoting the product.
You talk about partners and you look at Duncan, obviously that is a key relationship, isn't it, Duncan?
Of course.
The league and the host broadcaster. Just outline how discussions take place, maybe even from the very genesis of buying rights, right through to managing a relationship with a client such as Serie A.
Well, there's a host broadcaster for Serie A who are domestic, who own the rights and own the league, and then there's an auction in a particular region around the world who wants to buy the rights. So MENA in this area, the rights will be auctioned, and there'll be a mixture of the amount of money that's paid, that's bid, as everyone knows, and also the quality of how you can enhance the product of the rights holders. So there'll be discussions take place, auctions will take place, and then there'll be a sale of the rights, and then whoever wins the auction will own the rights to broadcast the events in their region, either exclusively or sub-licensed part of the deal, depending on the relationship and the amount of money is at stake. And I mean, the key for us is to build the quality of the viewer experience. Once we acquire the rights, something like beIN, we're continually trying to improve the viewer experience within the region of the particular leagues. So we're just not interested in taking the feed which is provided to the world, because, so for example, for Serie A, there would be a feed which is provided internationally. So I'm sure most of you are aware of this. There'll be the domestic game being played, Juventus, Roma. There will be a feed internationally available, and broadcasters around the world will buy that feed, and they will broadcast that feed in their region. So everybody is getting the same feed: America, Asia, Europe, and in MENA. Now what we're trying to do, we're trying to increase the experience of what that world feed can do, and not be a traditional broadcaster on the end of the world feed, because traditionally the world feed has been the afterthought of the domestic broadcaster. But the world is changing so much in amounts of money, in demands of broadcasting, in demands of viewers, that the broadcaster in the Middle East cannot be an afterthought for the broadcaster in Italy. It's becoming more and more and more of the same product, and the demands are becoming, the demands are big from us, for broadcasters. So something like the Serie A, you know, to bring it here, to make it a part of what is being broadcast is important, and it's not such a huge step, because the quality of the production that we're putting around particular events is the same and often better than you will see domestically now. That would never have been the case 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but I can assure you, for those not experienced in the region, that generally the quality of production is very, very high, and the quality of the analysis, the quality of what we're trying to bring to productions is very high. So for an Italian club to come to this region, or Italian clubs to come to this region, is a natural progression, and it will be followed, and it'll become, for sure, it'll become more and more and more and more common. These events, Champions League, there'll be a Champions League, whether it's in my lifetime but these games will become outside of the confines of where they've been traditionally. As we're broadcasting differently and expanding the way we broadcast, and how we receive our sport becomes more and more differently. So the owners of the league have to keep pace with that. And that's the big challenge for sport broadcasting, and broadcasting generally, that part of it is moving so fast, but another part of it is trying to keep up, so that the traditional way of covering games has to change and keep up with the progression in TV coverage. So we're looking to increase viewer experience, make it better, bring clubs like the top clubs from here to this region to play meaningful games, and broadcast those to the region as if they were watching it in Italy, the same experience.
Can you see a scenario, Duncan, over the coming years where coverage becomes less producer-led and more orientated by the viewer? You use the phrase viewer experience, and of course, what a viewer wants is always a part of it, but now we're moving towards such multi-platform content. Viewers aren't just watching, they can actually directly interact, and each of them can tell you exactly what they want. How has that changed coverage, and how will it change coverage, in your opinion, over the coming years?
How we consume football has changed so much in the last 20 years. Parts of it have changed massively. How many games we can see, how many games, live games, can the average family or sports fan see over a weekend with their other commitments to what's available. It's more and more selective as more and more is available, and that affects attendances at ground, it affects viewership, but there will always be a demand for the key games. There'll always be a demand for the most important fixtures of those leagues, and I'm sure there'll be a linear demand for it, but also the access of sports content on your tablets, on your phones. That's what's increasing. It's what surrounds it, I think, is becoming is less value to the viewer. The viewer is always interested in live, but there's so much live available now that the live is really king, and how we select those games and how they choose those games and how they watch those games is developing. But it will still be the cut game. Like there are so many, like Champions League, and when you can access cameras, they're often on digital platforms, behind the scenes stats, different camera angles for games, and different things available like that through tournaments. But they're not a real success because there's always the demand to watch the game in a good game. So there's that linear experience of the game, I'm sure will remain. That won't change, but the access to it and what surrounds it, I think it becomes less important. People watch the kickoff and finish at the final whistle. Obviously, you keep supplying and surround it with as much quality as you possibly can to give real resonance to the fixture. But it's becoming, you know, most people will select their games as they select their Netflix, or they select their Apple TV, or they select how we consume programs. But because it's live, it's different because it's at a certain time of day for people. People have to watch it at a certain time of day. But the actual consuming of it generally will develop and change.
Marco, would you entertain as CEO of Serie A if the right offer came, either financially or for your brand, to stage a league game between big clubs outside of Italy? Would you entertain the possibility of a Serie A fixture away from Italy? And what would be a motivating factor for that? Is it something that benefits your brand, or is it just a large financial offer?
No, certainly it's a matter of financial conditions, but I think that there are currently sporting rules which make this opportunity not so easy to be carried out. I know this was exactly the experience of the professional American leagues I mentioned it initially, and certainly is a way which could be considered as a benchmark. I know that there is a specific project in this perspective, which has been carried out by Premiership since a few years ago to play a whole round. It is a starting one or a round of the season outside England, for example, spread over the Far Eastern countries. But it's very, very difficult to be arranged, and I think that there are also some resistances from the sporting, the football institutions in this sense, because of course there is also somebody which is committed to protect in some way the local national football, which is of course also a relevant issue to be considered.
Hani, what does having Qatar 2022, especially in the period between now and then, 6 years, do for your league? Not just in terms of exposure, but presumably it gets you an Italian Super Cup, it gets you an exhibition game, and that in turn raises your standards. So maybe just give us an overview of, since Qatar got the World Cup, how that has benefited your domestic league.
Definitely, the country that hosts the World Cup is the center of attention. So Qatar is hosting 2022 World Cup, and by default, the league is also on the spot for that. As a league, because we are the main hub of playing football in Qatar. 14 teams with 185 matches, which is the longest competition in the season. And this serves as a great platform, of course, to enhance the performance of the players, and hence it has an impact on the national team. But being a league in a country that hosts the World Cup, definitely it gives us, it puts us under a lot of responsibility. So we have to always keep throughout the integration with the Supreme Committee, with the integration of Qatar Football Association. We always have stops to assess our works. And of course, we are always open in discussions, we exchange information, we exchange the knowledge, we want to enhance the know-how on how to do things better. So definitely, it's a remarkable test for us, and but also we are willing to do it, and we are willing to move forward and to develop. And this is very important, to learn from the experience, to learn from staging big events like this, and to use it for the future assessment of how to improve. I think we definitely in the league is trying our best to enhance all the experiences and to use it to promote the league better, to promote the brand of the league. BN is doing a great job of globalizing the football in Qatar, especially the national football in Qatar, and especially also Qatar Stars League. So we are very fortunate to have the support of all the stakeholders around us who can give us positive and constructive advice and to give us the development points. We know that we always have to develop and to evolve, but everybody is evolving. I mean, Duncan was just saying how broadcasting is evolving very quickly, and I think it's very important to have this vision of how to make football evolve even faster to match the changes around us. And we are in Qatar Stars League. We take this responsibility very seriously, and we definitely going to work on any improvement points that will give us even more exposure. But definitely we are confident of what we're doing. We learned a lot from our previous experiences. We are also now in a stage that we want to show everybody around the world, whether through the league or through the hosting of major events, that again, we have the capacity, we have the passion, and we have the hospitality of doing so. But also we want to leave a lasting experience of joy and happiness to everybody who comes to Qatar, and especially those who want to experience football in Qatar.
Duncan, Hani used that word globalization, and being as one of the few broadcasters that will take a big event, whether here or otherwise, El Clasico, for example, and put it out there with different studios in languages such as English, Arabic, French, and Spanish. What are some of the challenges when you have one event, you want continuity across the group, you want to do it justice in different regions, and you've got lots of different languages, presenters, stakeholders, and so on at stake? How easy is it to put on an event, whether it's an Italian Super Cup or an El Clasico, in all of these different languages and regions?
Well, it's obviously it's a challenge to do it, but that's what's exciting about broadcasting, and that's something how we have to develop. And for beIN, we're the pioneers of it. For example, our Champions League studio, which we make from beIN channel here in Qatar, our Champions League studio, the English studio, will be broadcast in MENA, in 24 countries of MENA. The same studio, presented by Richard Keys and Andy Gray and Ruud Gullit and Alan Shearer, will be broadcast in MENA. The same studio will be broadcast in Canada. The same studio will be broadcast in Australia. The same studio will be broadcast across Asia. So it's across, and the Champions League generally is across 5 continents. So with one studio, with Champions League, which is such a sponsored event by UEFA, and the scrutiny of that sponsorship in all those regions is really, really extreme. So we have to take the same break pattern, and in MENA we have a particular break sponsor. In Asia they'll have a particular break sponsor. In Canada they'll have a particular break sponsor. In Australia they'll have a particular break sponsor, which is all different and all partners of UEFA, and is all policed very diligently by UEFA to get it right. But we broadcast that from one studio because global connectivity now enables us to do that. And of course, the timing challenges and coordinating the MCRs and making sure that that production is technically neat is a challenge, but global connectivity and beIN are ripe to do that. We're in the unique position that we can do it. So we broadcast globally like that, which is, I don't think any other broadcaster does that the same. And what does that do? Obviously, logistically, it makes sense. We get one set of top-class analysts in a studio here, and we broadcast an event, a quality event around the world as well. So in Canada, in Asia, in Australia, they'll have a huge a panel with real kudos, and which they wouldn't be able to make sense of in a business sense for all these broadcasts around the world. We do it from Doha, we in English, and we embrace all those other countries who are big sports fans and will judge the product. And that's a huge achievement. Now, for other events, we broadcast everything dual language, English and Arabic. The language button here is really important. You can, almost every event that we have is dual language, Champions League, group stages. Every game will be available in English and Arabic by selecting on your language button. There'll also be French available and Spanish available. I think it's also what you can bring, the strength you can bring to the production when you have something like the Classico, which is shared and is exclusive to beIN across so many regions, or the Champions League. It's how you can share the resources, build the strength of the production, save money, save costs, but also continually increase the quality of the production that you're providing to the viewer, which we can do through sharing with different broadcasters of our own across the world, and taking the best part of what we produce here with the best part of what they produce in Spain, with the best part of what they produce in France, with the best access they can give into Australia, and bring that into one production through the connectivity that we have, through the studios that we have here in Doha. We can bring the best production there probably is in the world to something like Classico, to Champions League.
We started by asking why bring an event to a new region and what it gains. We're just going to wrap up with each of the panelists before we open it up to the floor by talking more about the aftermath, the legacy. Marco, you've had one Italian Super Cup right here in Doha. I'm not sure whether you've got any stats to illustrate the footprints, but presumably the main aim of taking a big competitive game away from Italy to any new region, you've been to China as well, is to widen your demographic. What kind of aftermath, what kind of positive knock-on effect do you have playing a game somewhere like Doha?
Certainly, this is the main scope of this operation. Last year, we had a cumulative and aggregate audience of all our Serie A matches of 1.2 billion, 200 million spectators all over the world. Of these, 40% are Italians, and of the remaining 60%, 20% were people watching our matches in a MENA territory, then China, then South America, and so the other countries. This is one of the main reasons why 6 out of the last editions of the Super Cup were played 4 times in China and 2 times considered, including also the one of this year in Qatar. But of course, the first reason was to be there when our fans are asked for be put directly in touch with their heroes, their favorite teams. We received back certain good positive feedbacks in terms of, for example, of increase of value of TV rights abroad. The last cycle of negotiation of TV rights for Italian National Cup, including also Super Cup, practically doubled compared to the previous cycle, considering just the international exploitation, and so this was practically in concrete demonstration what you said. But of course we are seeing that the global interest for our Serie A is increasing or coming back in some areas to closer to the values of some years ago. So this is our main focus. Of course, just to complete what has been said before, I think that also we, as organizers, as leagues, as promoters of events, should support that tailored attempt to increase the value of contents to the spectators, because we are trying to do the same. That is tailoring our contents, offering to our partners, to our broadcaster, specific opportunities in terms of quality contents, in terms of commentary positions, in terms of dedicated cameras, in terms of pre and post-match images which are of particular value. Currently in Italy, we have players coming from more than 60 different nations. That means also stories to be put to the attention of our fans. This is interesting. We are producing every week 2 30 minutes magazines in 3 different languages, apart from Italian, that is English, Spanish and Arabic as well, with the stories, also behind the scenes stories of football heroes, in order to introduce the round of next week, for example. We are sending to all our international broadcasters 5 news magazine every week in order to update day by day what is happening in Italian Serie A. All these, of course, should be more and more tailored to the different regional markets, and I'm sure that all the feedbacks will be positives in this case.
Hani, just some final thoughts from you as well. Elaborate on what you hope to gain as a QSL. Playing devil's advocate, people would say Juventus Milan, great for Italy, great for beIN Sports, but in the aftermath does nothing for the QSL comparative to, say, a tournament that involved Juventus Garefa and Milan versus Latvia, even though those wouldn't necessarily be competitive games. Do you gain a benefit after the Italian Super Cup or only in the build-up to it?
Well, it's a continuous gain, actually. Building up to it, through it, and after. It's a continuous cycle of exchange of knowledge and information, but also it's a continuous cycle of reinforcements of how we can deliver top events. So the gains will be immense after staging every prestigious event, especially as one that will take place on the 23rd of this month. It will leave a legacy for everybody, definitely. It will give us also more and more reinforcements of showing our capabilities, and it will show us, it will give us more confidence. It will give us more insight of how we challenge and how we tackle big events. It has been a great exchange of experience, and I'm very happy that the teams, the Qatar football team and the Italian football team are working together to enhance a better experience for everybody, for the viewers, for the players, and for the fans. So we're very happy and fortunate to have these events, and we will look forward to have even more events in the future.
And Duncan, how do you use the success of airing something like the Italian Super Cup or an El Clasico to safeguard your brand, to make sure that you get more of them, to bring more partners to the table? Because the age-old media cycle, and one of the downsides of being any broadcaster, is at any point somebody else could come in, outbid you, and take away any particular event. So how do you ensure, if you've put on something successfully, that the brand after that stays strong?
Well, you know, it's all just to do with cycles and money. You know, from my position as a program maker, I can't control those things. All I can do is ensure the greatest quality, sleeving the product, broadcasting the product, scheduling the product, supporting the product that is possible. So we bring the coverage to the event that the event warrants, and we support it. We push the content. We have a platform of channels at beIN which enables us to give such comprehensive coverage to events that no other broadcaster can do. For a Classico, we had Classico build up all day on Saturday. But equally, so that's on one of our channels, HD1. But equally on HD3, it's still Italian all day. It's you know, the viewer experience. There's such a comprehensive amount of live sport that we are broadcasting, say 600 hours a week across the 15 channels, which is a huge amount of live sport. So from my side, what we continue to do is build up to the event, analyze the event, and reflect the event better than anybody. I don't know if that really is the answer to your question, but that's what I try and do. That's the legacy of every event. That's what we're bringing, and the demands that I make and that we make as broadcasters. The acquisition, the financial side of it is obviously something which is separate from me, and there'll always be bigger bidders. But it's not just the financial. It's just not the financial. There is so much money that the rights holders, when it gets to a certain level, they have to have the exposure of the sport, which will maintain the desire for people to watch it, to bring in the advertising, to bring in the revenues. That's what they need, and the experience of selling the rights just to the highest bidder all the time doesn't necessarily enhance your product. In 4 or 5 years' time, it might go down, and there's such a competition between these main leagues and youth is changing. What youth wants is continually changing and will always change. It's changed for generations. And TV has to change that. Rights holders have to change that, and people have to reflect that. And people buying the rights have to reflect it as well. You can't. It's not just the amount of money each time. It's what you can bring to it. It's what you can bring to the different events that you broadcast, so that you're not neglecting one. You're not neglecting the Rome derby because you've got Man City versus Chelsea on at the same time. We don't have to make that choice for the viewer. On the platform that we have, it's always available. There's always dedicated channels to these leagues, to these events, to these tournaments. So from my side, it's the quality that we can bring to the product that we've bought, or has been bought for us.
Fascinating stuff. Well, 45 minutes has flown by. We've run out of time. The guys will float around if you've got any individual questions. Of course, Marco can also answer in Italian. Arabic interviews are available too. Duncan, English? Any French, Spanish that you can add to the mix? Probably just English answers. Ladies and gentlemen.
Most people are still awake.
Great stuff. Please give a big round of applause to Marco, to Hani, and to Duncan. And also to yourselves as well for getting through Soccerex here. The Asian Forum comes to a close. Thanks for your company, and that is it. There'll be informal drinks in June's for those of you that want to stay around. The beIN Media Group team have to go and do Champions League coverage now, so do tune into that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for Soccerex. Thank you for your time.